Good evening, this is Lucky Links. I'm going to be doing some videos now that address some of the main pains, obstacles, or problems that people have reading, either for themselves or other people, whether they're professionals, whether they're amateurs, whether they're just beginning, whether they've been doing this a long time, whether they're doing it for themselves or and family, or whether they're doing it for other people. So I got some really good responses to the last video where I said, hey, what's your main pain, obstacle, or challenge as a reader? And I got some really good responses on the video, from the video, and in my group, Wild Ass Cartomancy. And if you want to join that group, feel free, Wild Ass Cartomancy, go ahead and join it. And I'm going to answer one of them right now. The challenge or pain that the reader has is the client says nothing. I wrote it down here. So the client says when a client says nothing and they don't move for the whole reading. So that suggests that you're reading the person and they don't move at all. So they're not acknowledging anything, and that's I'll talk about that. And then in addition to that, clients who know the card meanings or some card meanings and challenge your interpretation, and of course they have a different outcome than you're predicting, and so they're challenging you the whole time. So let me address the first one. Client says nothing and they don't move for the whole reading. Good, go with it. If they're not moving, here's the thing I've learned personally in all the years I've been doing this. Their facial expressions can be completely misleading. Sometimes an individual is going inside because you're hitting it and they're like, whoa. Or sometimes they're going inside because they're processing the information. Just because they're not reacting in the affirmative doesn't mean that it isn't hitting home, or that the reading is not taking effect, or that it's not making them go, wow. I know a lot of people want to have that wow when they do readings. That's fine. I prefer actually to not look at the person when I'm doing a reading. Quite often I'll focus on the cards or what I'm feeling, and I won't look at the individual because I don't want anything else interfering with what's going on in the reading. So practice doing readings without looking at the individual at all. Then you don't have to worry about their reaction, whether they are interacting or not interacting, or giving you a confirmation that this is happening or not giving you a confirmation. Remember, there's a lot of reasons why a person might not be reacting to what you're telling them. It may just be that they're going inside and they're processing the information, or it may be that they're thinking, or it may be that they're listening very intently, and you have to know whether the person is listening or they're inside seeing, or maybe they need to feel the information, or maybe they're processing and feeling it. So just because they're not reacting doesn't mean anything. So get used to, or try doing some readings where you focus on what you're feeling and then get the sense. A lot of times it'd be good, you can try this. You can just focus on what's you seeing in the cards. Take a deep breath in and feel what you're feeling, and then just say it out there. And then at the end, you can turn to them and you can say, hey, is there anything you want to add, or any other questions you have? Or does this sound like something that's going on? Are we connected here? And you can check in occasionally or not at all. Just go through, give them everything you got, all what's going on with the reading, and then at the end go, okay, now that's what I've got for you. What can I clarify for you? So try that. Try not looking at them, and then you won't worry about what's happening with their facial expression one way or another, okay? It's a good way to get used to trusting yourself without worrying about what's happening with another person as well. So a lot of people, they have a confidence concern. Go out there, go for it, jump and take the risk, and read everything you got. So this is all that's coming up. I'm getting that there's a great deal of social pressure coming on you right now about the knowledge. The knowledge that you've had in your life at this point has been served you, but it's changing right now. There's an individual in your life that you've been caring for, and that relationship is breaking down, and you're finding that this woman is interfering. And then you just read it all out, and then you address the individual and at some point and say, hey, do you have any feedback right now that you want to give me, or is there anything that you'd like to add to that, or am I answering the questions that you want? Would you like me to go in another direction with this? Would you like me to take a different tack? Okay, so try that. Don't look at them. Focus on the cards, or focus on whatever method or focus on your crystal ball, or focus on whatever, if you're doing the mediumism thing, whatever, focus on that. Next, the other one, clients who know card meanings and they challenge the interpretation. and their outcome that they're predicting is different from what you're interpreting. Okay, that makes less work for you. If someone is a client and you're a professional and they're challenging your readings, there's only so much you can do. You can fight with them, which isn't going to get you anywhere. And you can take some steps, though, to sort of shortcut that. So one of the things that I do is I'll use an oracle that I know that they don't know. So I'll use my black cat. If I'm in a venue where I know there's a lot of people who read tarot, or there's a lot of people who read Lenormand, or a lot of people who read cards, I'll use my black cat. And just had this happen recently, was at an event, and someone was like, "What are those cards?" She's like, "I know the meaning of tarot, and you're like hitting it, but I don't know any of the meanings of those cards." And I said, "Well, it's my black cat." And so there's no interference there in that particular case, if it's causing interference. The second thing you can do is enjoy their enthusiasm and say, "Hey, what would you like to add to this?" A lot of times I'll ask someone, I'll say, "Hey, if you get some impression off of this, I want you to tell me what it is." Because psychic doesn't mean omniscient. They may tune into something that's really important. And it's really valid for them to say, "Hey, you know what you're saying is really right on. However, I'm going to tell you this is going on as well." And then they add another dimension, and then there's an actual give and take relationship happening there, and you're really tuned into the person, and you're listening to them. And in a lot of cases, a person needs to talk it out, and they want someone to listen, and they need someone to talk to. Now, if they want to argue with you, that's a different story. You can let them go. This is what I do in those situations. Like a while back, I had a person, I told her about this relationship that was going on. It was a relationship between her and the spouse. And I said, "This is what's going on." She said, "No, that's not what's happening. That's another person that you're reading." I said, "Okay." And that was it. I'm like, "Okay, well, this person, this is what's going on, and this is what you need to be aware of in that situation, so just be aware of it." And she's like, "Okay, well, that's not my spouse. That's this person over here. That's totally not that person." There was another person in the room that was her mother, who said the same thing. "No, that's this other person. That's not the spouse." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to argue?" That makes no sense. It doesn't get you anywhere. It makes the reading combative. And I'm like, "Okay, well, this is what's going on. This is what I'm seeing in that situation. This is what you should be aware of." About 6 months later, she came back and she told me all of this stuff was going on with her and her spouse. And she went, "Oh my gosh, you saw it in that reading that you did for me." And I said, "Well, at the time, you weren't ready to actually face that about this. So, what was I going to do? What are you going to do in that situation?" So a lot of times people aren't ready to hear something like that. And you can do your best to embrace their enthusiasm, embrace their input, and it'll tell you how much they can handle. It's not your job as a psychic to say, "Hey, this is the way it is, and this is how you're going to take the information," which I'm not suggesting that the person who asked this question is doing. But just remember, it's their reading. They can spend the time however they want. For example, sometimes a client will come to you and they'll want you to jump hoops. They'll want you to prove you're psychic. And I figure if that's what you need, if that's what's needed, then okay, we can do that. I can concentrate on that. Sometimes it takes a little longer and it takes up the time a little more. But that's what they're needing for whatever reason. Maybe they just need to know that there's something bigger in the world. And maybe that's providing what they really need. So if they're telling you they need something, if they need to argue with you or whatever, maybe then you're noticing there's a lot of argument coming up, and you can say, "Hey, I'm noticing that there's a lot of cards coming up in relation to the need to be right. Would you like to look at the effect that that's having on your life?" And then you can throw out the cards and say, "Hey, what does this need to be right?" Or maybe someone's really genuinely having a strong impression, and you want to acknowledge it. "Hey, I hear what you're saying." Or, "Hey, absolutely. Well, that's how this plays in." Or if there's just an argument going on, maybe that's just what they need. Maybe they need to argue with someone or fight with someone in this situation. And you always have the option of not reading that person again if you feel that it's not worth the exchange. So think about it that way. You can either bring them in with their enthusiasm and go, "Hey, you know what? That's a really good understanding of that. Let's add that to this layer that I'm seeing here. And if we put that layer on top of it, maybe we can expand it a little more." Now, in the end, will they see the outcome? Maybe. In some cases, they do. They'll go, "Hey, you know what? I didn't see it at the time, but that is what was going on." Or maybe in that case, It doesn't work that way, and you just get someone who wants to argue with you. It's your option whether or not you want to take that client again. And remember, if that's what they're paying for, maybe that's what they're paying for. Maybe they just want to fight with someone. And you can use the cards to determine that. Or you can feel what it is. And be careful that you don't take on their garbage. If you feel stuff, you feel their garbage, go ahead, push it into the ground. Don't take it. Push it into the ground. Don't take on their stuff. So, I hope that answers those questions, and I hope that gives you a couple of new options in those cases. If the client, you can use a completely different oracle they want to use playing cards, use a different kind of oracle entirely that they don't know, and then you take that out of the equation. Or bring them into it and enjoy their enthusiasm and express an appreciation for their enthusiasm. Maybe they just want someone to hear them. That could be the case too. Also, when the client says nothing, don't worry about it. Focus on what you're seeing, lay out the picture, lay out the story, get to a point where you've told them enough, or you get to the end and you're like, that's it, that's what I've got for you. And then, don't worry about it, and then see what happens after that. A lot of times they'll go, wow, thank you very much. And some people won't say anything in that case, and that's okay too. That doesn't mean that it hasn't had an effect, and it doesn't mean it wasn't what they're needed. I think in both of these cases there's an assumption. One, in both cases the assumption is that you don't know what you're doing as a reader, and that may not be the case at all. So consider that possibility. Consider the possibility that it isn't that the person that you're reading doesn't think that you don't know what you're doing. It may just be that person is either internally processing something, or they're going through something themselves, or they process things differently than you do, or they need something else from the experience, and maybe it doesn't have anything to do with you. If you can use the cards to predict, and you see these things coming to fruition, and you know that you've got a good track record for it, then trust yourself and play with it. Be open. Bring the person in. You want them to interact with you. You want it to be their reading. Remember, sometimes they may get the absolute insight they need by going, oh my gosh, that card or that moment or what you just said, boom, I know what this is. I know what this is. And it's not for you to figure out anyway. It's theirs to figure out. It's the gift that you can help them maybe. But the real gift is the realization that, oh my gosh, this is what's going on. This is what's going on with me. I know how to fix this. Okay. So I hope that helps. Hope that answers your question. And I know for every person that asks a question like that, there are 50, 60, 70 others who have the same question. So I hope that helps. I hope that works for you. And I'm Lucky Links. And you can, if you got a question like this, what's your biggest pain, obstacle, or challenge as a reader? Go ahead and put it in the thing below. Doesn't have to be a professional. It could be a beginner, whatever. And as always, I am wishing you success and good fortune in all that you do.